What is going on, guys? Pat out in the shop, and tonight we have some choices to make. We have our 355 YouTube build sitting with the bottom end together for the most part, but tonight we're gonna pick heads so I can get rolling on this. So let's check it. So if it's your first time here, welcome to the channel, and if not, you guys already know about the Help Me Build It series with this little 355 small block Chevy. And the whole idea behind this thing is to build a small block Chevy for the average guy. The average guy building, just a nice little engine in his garage for a reasonably price, nothing that's gonna get the wife mad at you. So, well, not too mad at you. So, so what we have here so far is a basic 355. So that's a small block Chevy 350 bored 30 over. We have 30 over flat top pistons. We have a reconditioned polished crankshaft. We have reconditioned rods with ARP bolts. This is an 880 roller block, so this is a late model block. It's got provision for a roller cam, so we will be running a roller cam in this, which is really nice. Not so, big on the budget, but the roller cams are nice, especially when you have a block that's set up for it. So that's what we're gonna run, and that's gonna be a choice coming up of what cam we're gonna put in this thing. We do have a few options there too. So where we're at right now, the bottom end's together, and by what I mean by that is the pistons are in, the crank is in, everything's torqued. We did the thrust bearing. If you check out the last video if you need to know about thrust bearing, crankshaft end play. So everything as far as cranks and rods and pistons are all together in the engine, and we're ready to make some decisions on what we're gonna go forward with putting this thing together with. So let's look into that. All right, so how this is gonna work, I'm gonna show you each head that it's a potential for this. This is stuff I had upstairs, mostly budget friendly stuff to kind of go with our build. This head we're gonna start off with is actually gonna be the most expensive. I'm gonna tell you the valve size, some flow numbers, and then the general idea of the head, and you guys can vote in the comments below. So whatever head you guys want to go with, vote in the comments below. In a week from today, I'll tally it up and we can see which head you guys are going to go with. And I have an idea what it's going to be, but let's take a look. So first up, this is probably the most expensive one we have here. This is a set of Dart Iron Eagles. These are the 180cc Iron Eagle heads. They feature a 202 intake valve, a 1.6 exhaust. They're very similar to a Vortex head in a lot of ways. They use a standard bolt pattern, small block Chevy bolt pattern, but in a lot of ways, flow characteristics, chamber size, 64 cc's, very similar to the Vortex. They're basically a 202 1.6 Vortex head, and the flow numbers are basically the same as that. The flow numbers on the intake side, so at 300 we flow 200 CFM, 400 241, and at 500 242. On the exhaust, 300 144 CFM, 400 166, 500 180, with a peak flow at 700 lift of 184. So it's very similar to a Vortex head. That is what that is one option that we have upstairs. I'm gonna have to do a little work to these. It's gonna need valve guides and some work to run these heads, but an option that maybe someone's looking at. If you ask me, these heads are a little overpriced if you're looking at buying a set, but that's up to you. So let's take a look at the next set of heads. So next up, here is a budget head. This, if you've seen my videos, my prior videos, I did a cylinder head video on an Amazon head that was like $160 back. Now these jacked up. I hope I was like, I don't know if me making that video made the price of these go up, but as soon as I made the video on these heads, it probably has to do with COVID. I'm not going to take any credit for it, but and I don't want anyone to be mad at me, but as soon as I made the video on these heads, the price of these heads skyrocketed, and if I knew they flowed as good as they do, I probably would have bought more at the time. But let's go over these. This is the only aluminum option that we have. So these are the DNA China head, I call them, aluminum 200cc, advertised 200cc. They are about 203cc intake runner, 202 intake valve, 1.6 exhaust, 65cc chamber, advertised at 68, but there's 65cc chamber. They actually flow pretty decent right out of the box. 300 lift, they flow 199, 400, 225, 500, 241. So not too bad. They peak flow about 250 CFM at 700 lift. It's got a killer exhaust side on these. It'd be good for a boosted application. 300 lift, we're flowing 150.9. 400 lift, 179. 500 lift, 186. 600 lift, 194.7. And a peak flow at 700 lift of 196 on the exhaust, and that's untouched with the 1.6 exhaust valve. So these are gonna need some work, and to get them together, I'll put some valves, good spring set on it, or whatever cam we end up going with. But that's an option. So this is definitely a budget head. I don't know anything about reliability. I have built an engine with these once for my buddy, but he hasn't got the car running yet, so I don't know. I don't have any hands-on as far as drivability experience with them. Overall, I'm fairly impressed with them. They're very, very similar to the AFR Enforcer head. If you check out one of my prior videos, you see that I compared these two in flow data in side-by-side comparison, and they almost look like they're made in the same factory. So I'm impressed with these heads. They work really well as far as flow, but I don't know, like, the guides, I don't know how the longevity, so it would be interesting to put it on an engine that I could see run. I don't know if I would want to put it on a customer's engine right away without knowing any, you know, my buddy's engine is one thing, but a customer's engine might be a little different. So, but that's an option. So if you guys are interested in how much power they make, here's our chance, but that's totally up to you. Let's take a look at our next option. So here you go, guys. I'm gonna do these two together because there are both Vortex. You guys love the Vortex, I love the Vortex. So I knew that I had to have this as an option for our YouTube build. We have two different Vortex here, same casting number, but this is the Vortex that were cut for the 202.16 valve, where this is the stock valves. This is the 1.5, 194 on the intake. This one's had a little bit of porting. This is the one I showed in a previous video. Yeah, this is the one I showed in the previous video. It does flow half decent. Actually, I'll have it right here. So we do have a 300 lift. It flows 193, 400, 230, and 232 at 500 with a peak flow of 235 at 700. You never lift it to 700 or open the valve to 700, but just it goes to show you this how stable the port is. On the exhaust, this is where the Vortex shine with a bigger exhaust valve. This has got the 1.6 exhaust valve. It flows 151 at 300, 171 at 400, 177 at 500 with a peak flow of 185 at 700. So there's quite an improvement, especially on the exhaust side with the larger valves. Let's go over to the stock Vortex valve size and see what we got. All right, so for the stock Vortex, chances are we're not going to leave this stock unless you guys really want to. This should flow at 300, 188, 400 at 224, and 500 at 239.7. That might sound a lot to you guys, but this is not a Mexican casted head. This is an actual production 062 head, so they do flow better, where if you were doing a Mexican casting or a lay casting, you might only see about 220. So if you check out my previous videos, I show a comparison of the Mexican castings versus the 062 or 906 later castings, or earlier castings, and the earlier castings always flow better, but they're more prone to cracking. So what we can do though with this, so the intake, I told you what that flows, so you might be able to get about 240 CFM. The exhaust is on the weaker side, 300 lift 141, 400 145, and 500 about 160. With some porting, we can get that up to, we can get the intake up a little bit, 250-ish, and we can do a lot with the exhaust. Even with the stock valve, we can get this up into close to 180-ish, depending on how much porting we do. But that's going to be up to you guys. So we can leave it stock, which is not fun, but if you really want to, but we can do some porting, we can use the 202s. It's totally up to you. So make sure you vote in the comments below what you want, what do you want to use. I had a feeling you guys are going to want Vortex, but we don't have to. We can go with the aluminum heads, we can go with the Iron Eagles, whatever you guys want. It's going to be up to you. This engine is your decision. One thing I forgot to mention as far as compression ratio, if you're wondering with this engine, we're going to go over that in another video about how to check deck height and compression ratio. But if you're wondering what the static compression ratio is, with a 68cc, we'd be looking about right around 10 to 1. And then with the 64 cc's, we'd be around the 10.3, 10.4, somewhere around there, if you're wondering. So still with the good combustion chambers, we should have no issues running on pump gas, and we're going to keep the quench tight. We'll talk about that in a later video. But if you're wondering, it's going to be about from 10 to about 10.3, 10.4 to 1 compression with any of these heads. Alright guys, so now it's up to you. You got to comment below and you got to vote on which head you want. You want the aluminum DNA, you want the Dart Iron Eagle, you want the regular Vortex stock valve size, or you want the 202 1.6 Vortex. Ported, if we're going to do some port work, we'll probably end up porting any of them that we do and flow bench testing them, because I know you guys like that stuff. And then once we get those numbers, we get this thing together, we're gonna dyno this engine and see what it makes. It's gonna be really interesting, especially for a budget build. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to my channel, because it's gonna be really neat seeing this, and I appreciate all the support from you guys. I'll be tallying everything up in a week. Thanks guys.